the Office of the Special Prosecutor. Well, along the way, we heard the man occupying that position saying that he was Ankonam. To wit, he was alone in that fight. In this current administration, the President, John Mahama, has also felt that there's a need to deal with the same canker of corruption and looting of state properties. And so he has set up what most government representatives describe as preparatory team, the Operation Recover or Loot, to, as it were, set the ground running for the Attorney General who are just approved today by Parliament. And so beyond these and the institutions and the conversations around these institutions, what needs to be done? What are the underlying issues and what needs to be done to deal with them? Hello, good evening and welcome to Agenda. My name is Beatrice Edu, and tonight we are not just going to look at the problems that the country is facing when it comes to looting state property and corruption. We are also going to look at how to deal with the problem and perhaps the best way in terms of moving forward so that we are able to deal with this problem in the, or nib it in the bud, as it were. I do have on the panel with me on my right side Andy Apiakubi. He's an immediate past member of parliament for Asante Achim North in the Eastern region. He joins us, in the Ashanti region, I beg your pardon. He joins us in studio. Good evening to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening. Thanks for bringing me here.
I also do have with us Council Adawudu. He's a member of the legal team of the governing NDC. Good evening to you, sir. Thank you also for joining us.
It's always a pleasure to be on this platform.
And we'll be joined via video call by Adam Senanu. He's co-chair, Citizens Movement Against Corruption, as well as a member of the legal and constitutional team of the opposition MPP, Frank Davis. He will also be joining us as well. But let me start with you, gentlemen, in studio here. And I want to start with you, Mr. Piakubi. Prior to the establishment of Oro, like I just talked about, we have Hashraj. I mean, the Ombudsman, which has one of its functions, one of the 4 functions as investigating corruption. Aside from that, we do have the Public Financial Management Act 2016. We have, I mean, I can go on and on. Why do we have this problem?
Yes, thank you very much, and let me wish our cherished viewers a very good evening. We have, as a country, developed various mechanisms for fighting corruption, and some of them include the legislative framework and also the institutions of state tasked with the mandate of fighting corruption. The problem has been how have they coordinated activities as institutions, and how have we effectively managed the various legislation available for us to fight corruption, and the willpower of governments to ensure that corruption is reduced to the barest minimum. So on all these 3 fronts, I would say that we have not achieved the expected results. In terms of the institutions, sometimes we see even institutions even fighting over theft, how to operationalize their mandate, and sometimes we see even institutions either duplicating in their functions or even fighting against each other in the performance of their duties. So the collaboration that we expected to come from the institutions, we are not seeing. Number 2, the laws are adequate. To me, the laws are very adequate, except that we have not been able to manage the laws efficiently and effectively. And therefore, there are various gaps in the implementation of the various laws. So we have not had the laws working for us for the purpose for which these laws were enacted.
So what I hear you say is that the laws are good, except that these institutions we have established do not have one focus in order to work towards one purpose for the country.
That's correct. And lastly, but not the least, we have not seen enough government commitment to ensuring that the institutions work and the laws also work. So various governments have paid lip service to even attempts at fighting corruption. So we put all these 3 issues together. We have not seen any legitimate fight against corruption.
Any legitimate fight against corruption. Let me get your thought as well, Councillor Dawodu. Honorable Apiakubi thinks that the laws are good, except that we don't seem to have a focus when it comes to dealing with the problem itself. What do you think?
All right, yes. Good evening to our cherished viewers. I think that I agree with him that we have the laws. The laws that we have are adequate, is sufficient, that we should be able to tackle corruption. Right from the Constitution, that is Article 35(8), talks about we should eradicate corruption. Going to 41, that is the directive principle of state policy, the duty, what we should do to prevent. One of the things that we lack with the laws is that we have these laws scattered in various provisions. So we do not have one comprehensive law that deals with the corruption. Now, the other thing is the political and institutional will. Are they ready? Do we have that capacity ready to execute and implement the law? It is because it gets to a point that I believe we have cultural undertones, the fabric of society, the way it is woven.
How do you mean?
In the sense that when somebody offends, he has to be punished. The laws are there. You realize that it gets to a point we have politicians, we have traditional leaders, we have even citizens who come and say, oh, we are the same people. We come from the same village. We go to the same school. So why should you be seen as somebody who is punishing this? Everybody is doing it. So it is the will and even the society. This is one of the things that we need to look at. It is the orientation that we have culturally. If you see that, so there's a situation, you want to punish the person, and you start having a lot of calls from eminent people within society. At least this damper the spirit. And people don't want to be held as scapegoats. People don't want to be seen as enemy of progress. Because of some of these things, that is why sometimes fighting corruption, it's not about the laws. It's about fighting it, that will, institutional will, that political will, that I'm going to do it. I don't care about whose us is God. That is what we need. And I think that we are getting there. Now that we are seeing civil society, people pushing that we should have code of conduct, we should be able to implement and execute, investigate. I think that now society itself is rising. So that where we are lacking that political will, that space is being filled by civil society. And I think that we are seeing some changes when it comes to corruption.
So when you say, and let me acknowledge Adam Senanu, who has joined us. Adam, if you can turn on your video so we can see you, I'll be coming to you very shortly. But if you say that, okay, we can see you now, Adam, I'll be coming to you just very shortly. I just want to get clarity from what Council just said. You say that we don't seem to have the will, and then you have people coming in to want to plead for the individual, quote unquote, who has been fingered, as it were, to have been involved in corrupt practices. So would, for instance, the Cecilia Dapa issue be a clear example where, and I just want to read that letter the president wrote just when Madam Cecilia Dapa resigned, accepting her letter and said, I have received your letter dated Saturday. I will not read all of it. I'll just read it first and then jump to the conclusion. Dated Saturday, 22nd July 2023, resigning from office as Minister for Sanitation and Water Resources and as a member of the government. And then the president goes on, the immediate past president says, the work you have undertook during your, or you undertook during your period in government was excellent and productive. And I thank you for your wholehearted contribution and devotion to the progress of the government and the nation. I am confident, like you, that at the end of the day, your integrity whilst in office will be fully established. I wish you the very best in all your endeavors. I mean, after this letter came out and a few other instances, we had people giving the president the name of a clearing agent, something that he denied even before he got out of office. Was that the kind of example that you were saying we have had people coming in to, quote unquote, defend people who are perceived to be corrupt?
It's a classic example. Classic example that shows you that the political will and even institutional will. We have seen it when Yoko, you know, it was a tough thing between even special prosecutor and Yoko. These are two institutions, anti-corruption institutions. And to prosecute or say, this is what we have done, one comes and says that it is not within my province. The other one comes and says, well, we've looked at it within the province. Now, where the institution also, we had situations. I don't want to...
But I think eventually Mame Iyatiwa, the head of Yoko, said that she had been advised by the AG not to proceed further.
Exactly. And the AG is also a member of the government, right? So seeing, prosecuting your colleague, is that a political will? Do we have that political will? Another classic example is that it was the first time that maybe the police would come and say that we have cleared these people. We have not seen any wrongdoing. So you see most cases also get to the police. Those institutions, when they had to look at it and say, we are going to prosecute you, I will comment any day, anytime somebody thinks who is doing his professional job and would say that looking at what I have, I will not be able to convict or have a conviction and bring it bare. But once it comes and it lies on the table, nothing is being heard about it, and allegations upon allegations are being made. And we see our professionals, people who are in charge, and they are mute.
They are mute. Let me get the preliminary thought of Edem Senanu, who is co-chair Citizens Movement Against Corruption. Mr. Senanu, I'm sure you've heard both the submissions of Honorable Andiapia Kubi as well as Council Dawudu. I wonder where you stand on it. I mean, both are, and especially Mr. Dawudu, talking about the fact that we don't seem to have the political will and even giving examples. Where do you stand on this?
I mean, I think the general thrust has been that we have a lot of laws, which I agree with. But I would like to suggest that the laws need tightening, and there are areas where we have major gaps that need to be filled to get the results or the outcomes we've been seeking. Let me mention 2 or 3 of them. For example, in the area of reverse burden of proof, we need to ensure that across board we have reverse burden of proof clauses in all these corruption-related laws. That way, unexplained wealth can be dealt with. Like in the Cecilia Dapa case, the OSP law, Act 959, doesn't cover a reverse burden of proof. You have that under Yoko, and Yoko refused to trigger it. Actually, you have it under the upgraded, updated Yoko law. And whether it is that they did not avert their minds to that, but we even pointed it out to them. They refused to apply it, and the AG's advice under that circumstance was not acceptable. Again, we need to pass a conduct of public officers law. The COPO is outstanding. In its form, it needs some upgrading because there are areas that are not covered, but especially for breaches of ethical and professional conduct. You see, we don't have codified sanctions. So if you take such cases to court related to a public officer who's breached conflict of interest or done anything like that, nothing happens. So we need to tighten that as well. We've clearly spelled out sanctions for breaches of ethical and professional conduct. So those are some of the things that need to be done so that we get much more progress than we've seen. Again, there are a number of other things. Judicial reform. The posture of the judiciary in understanding or prioritizing anti-corruption related issues, or understanding how to support us ensuring that the state doesn't lose resources. That's important. Collaboration across agencies is also an issue. So there are things we need to do if we're going to get the kind of results we've not seen in the past.
There are things we need to do if you're going to get the results we have not seen in the past. And I know you touched a bit about the law, but we also do have, and I know you know the list, the Code of Public Conduct for Public Officers of Ghana. And I'm sure if you've seen the Chapter 24 of the country's constitution, it even talks, among other things, asset declaration and stuff. Aside from what you've spoken about, would you say that some of these quote-unquote laws or legal provisions are perhaps obsolete, and there's moving forward, there's a need to either do away with them or ones that are really practical when it comes to dealing with our issues? And bearing in mind what we heard Mr. Victor Dawudu say, that the cultural underlinings also play a role about it. How do we couch things that would deal with all those?
I'm glad you raised it. I thought I was talking too much, so I said to stop. But our access declaration regime is not fit for purpose. Yeah. And that needs to be totally reviewed. You can't have a situation where you just go and put things in an envelope. Nobody validates it. It's not publicized. Even our brothers in Nigeria already have all of this online. Any citizen across the length and breadth of Nigeria can go and confirm that the property or the car that I know he has is there. Is covered.
But if you read it, so forgive me for interrupting you. If you read it, it says that it must be published in the Gazette within certain days after you've declared. So we are not publishing them.
We are not following. Yes, we are not. So at the moment, it's not fit for purpose. So that's just one area. Witness protection. Between witness protection and whistleblowing, we do not seem to have a system in place that actually protects the identities of people. So we have had quite a number of incidents where people report cases and then their cover is blown. So the criminal calls them and says, I know you are the one who reported. And so that again has been an issue. Actually, it is the reason why for me oral is brilliant, because the individuals that have obtained information in the past, historically utilized it, and the sources have not come out into the public domain for there to be a backlash. So there are all these things that have happened. The laws, those that even exist, need tightening. There are laws that we don't have that should be in place. It's a judicial reform. And ultimately, if you want to talk about this, corruption is really a reflection of the morals of a society. Yeah. So if you want medium to long-term success, the public education, the modeling of this from primary through secondary needs to be stronger, so that you have core values of honesty, integrity, hard work, what have you, that are instilled, you know, and then we'll begin to see that they who come out of us into leadership into these places will be the gatekeepers in ensuring that we don't have corruption and good governance is promoted. In
ensuring we don't have corruption, and I'm coming to you, Andy Appiah Kubi. I know that at a certain point in time when Ken Ofori-Atta was there, you led that over 80 MPs who want to get him out. But at a point, we saw you do a U-turn together with the members. We heard Mr. Victor Dawudu saying or talking about the willingness of people and the kind of background negotiations that, you know, go on to try to let's sleeping dogs lie, if as it were. I mean, how do you fit into that argument? I mean, using what happened with you when you were in Parliament.
Yes, let me take this opportunity to explain what happened and also put the matter probably to sleep. It is not the case that we fizzle out. In fact, the Constitution gives us a mandate to protect public property and also even to challenge the performance of public officers and also make suggestions to the head of state, the president. And we did whatever we had to do within the constitutional arrangement. We needed to do the agitations. We needed to make submissions to the president as to what we thought was the situation. And mind you, we had done all that we needed to do of seeking the attention of the president, and even where we were found wanting in our attempt to reach the president, we came out with a press statement. And for us, that amounted to providing the necessary information to the presidency that if this office holder was changed, we thought that the country will benefit from the change. And we didn't have anything more to do In fact, we couldn't have forced the president to do what we expected him to do. All that the Constitution allowed us was to bring the advocacy to the presidency, and we expected the president to act on our prayer. But it didn't happen, except that there were excuses that it will be done in some time, and that the assurance was that when we were able to finish with the IMF discussions, the president will act. We didn't have any further tool in our hand to compel the president to do what we expected him to do.
So what
except that even, in fact, by the Constitution, we could make our advocacy to him. But these are only, there is no force behind it that he will be compelled to do what we were saying. Because the Constitution says that he may act on our prayer, and he chose not to act on it. We couldn't do anything otherwise. And if it was a case that the Constitution gave a mandatory provision that he shall do it pursuant to our advocacy, then we could have resorted to the law to compel him to do it. So the gap is in the law. The law did not give us the adequate tools to compel him to perform.
So it was the president's inaction that compelled you to do the U-turn?
No, we didn't do any U-turn. We had finished with our mandate. We have exhausted it. We came to the president. We made our submissions to him. But again, he will operate within the law and respond to what we were also agitating for. And that's why I'm trying to explain to you that in his performance, he is not under obligation to listen to us and perform as we expected.
But will you call it unwillingness on the part of whoever is occupying that position not to deal with the matter as Ghanaians expect him to?
Yes, because the Constitution allowed him to exercise a discretion. And that which I think is a gap in the law. So if we are doing a constitutional amendment, a constitutional review, these are some of the areas that we need to, bring action to bear on whoever is the office holder to do as majority of Ghanaians expected. So if the wedding had been Isha and it was mandatory, then we could go to court and say that Supreme Court make a pronouncement pursuant to the law so that he will accede to our request. Unfortunately, in the case of Ghana Muslims Association Representative Council versus Attorney General, the Supreme Court says that it is not mandatory. It is obligate. It's not mandatory. So he had a right to decide whether or not to do what we were expecting.
So let me ask you this question before I go to Mr. Dawood, and then I'll get a thought of Adam Senano as well. Are you saying that the president, the immediate past president, per your experience just on the Ken Ofori-Atta thing issue alone, was not committed to fighting corruption as he claimed he did, even by setting up the OSP, and perhaps he was using the law just, the fact that it's not binding just to not to do what he had to do?
You see, maybe we are getting it wrong. We didn't come to the president to get him out because of corruption. That was not the case. We came to the president to get him out because we thought that he was not performing to the best of our expectations as a minister of state. And therefore, looking at the challenges facing the economy at the time, we thought that another person could have done a better job. But that was our submission. We did not cite cases of corruption before the president. So I'm not sure that it would be a good example to explain what the president would have done or did or didn't do because of corruption. No, corruption was not the underlying
yes, you talked about performance, yes.
We talked about performance, general performance. So it was not about corruption or corruption-related activities, no.
I just want to come to Mr. Dawood because in 2017, we were number 40 on the Corruption Perception Index. We climbed to 43. I believe we are still hanging around that 43. People may say that, well, that's an improvement, but a majority of people would say also that it's it's woefully inadequate, as it were. We've seen police and even the Office of the Presidency ranking very high on the Corruption Perception Index. I'm just wondering, really, with all of these, how you think we can deal with the problem as we have it now?
Because I think it is not rather the improvement, it was a retrogression. Because when on the scale where we were, we had deep down on the transparency index that corruption was high and it has permeated the whole society, even to the top echelon of society, where we found the presidency, the police, the judiciary, that all. I think this corruption has always been with us. We have tried several ways looking at it. One of the things I believe when it comes to corruption, and I think that it features in the manifesto of the NDC, is to make sure or initiate a legislation that political appointees, people who are politically exposed, and others will not have the benefit or be in the position to buy anything from the state. When the state is, because sometimes you look at the circumstances surrounding it, it is unconscionable. It is repugnant that people who are put at the position of responsibility put themselves at the position of conflict of interest. So legislation to deal with conflict of interest also would have to be factored into that.
But the PNDC law also mentions it. PNDC law talks about conflict of interest. That's it.
Yeah, no, it's that province has been given to SHRAD.
Yes.
So SHRAD looks at it, but you don't find a law, a legislation that's combined. That's why I said that our laws are scattered within the pieces of legislation. Now, what this we are looking at is the conduct of public officers. We are looking at conflict of interest. We are looking at assets register. So we get to know the assets that the state has. Once all this is put together, then we would look at how do we put all this, that the people we put in charge do not benefit from it under the pretext of the guy that, look, everybody, I'm a citizen. So now the watchman that has been put now becomes the guard dogs. People will become the guard dogs and say, although I'm a watchman, I have to benefit with it. I think that is the way to go. So if you want to come and serve in government or public institution, and even going to private institution, as the OSP law says, that where there is an issue or resemblance of corruption or alleged corruption, both private and even in public, you should be hauled before and investigate it. So I think these are the things that we are looking at. That there is, example, when you go to Singapore, you go to some of the Asian countries, when you are involved in corruption, you are blacklisted. Your whole generation, the family, with the same name and others, will never have opportunity to serve in public service. And even the punishment that you get for corruption is unattractive. So people are not attracted to get themselves into. I think that as time goes on, we need to look at something like orientation, our behavior, what we do. And if you are blacklisted and you know your generation will not be able to serve when you're convicted of corruption, I don't think that people will want their family name to be sold and say that my father or somebody's, our name has been blacklisted and say we are corrupt people. And my generation that will come after me will not benefit by serving or contributing their quota to the public service.
So let me.
It is one of the ways that when we look at attitudinal change with corruption and we put some of these measures in place, it might be harsh, it might be draconian to say that why is it that that generation has not committed any sin and they are being punished. That would tell you that you would have to behave. The most of society and the rest will now hedge you. So that when you go out of that mosque and the ethos of society, that will tell you that I am hurting my generation. Those are some of the things that I think we need to look at going forward.
And I'll be coming to you very shortly, Mr. Senano, and I'll come to you, Honorable Apiakubi. But I was stating the PNDC law earlier, 280, and I will just read a bit of one and go into section 2, where it says, unless that person has completed and submitted a written declaration of all property or asset owned by that person, directly or indirectly, on a questionnaire provided for the purpose of the Auditor General or the Electoral Commission. 2 says the declaration referred to in subsection 1 shall be submitted in respect of a public office specified in the first. It goes on to talk about the chairman and members of the Electoral Commission and Auditor General shall make written declaration on property or asset to the president. It says a person required to declare property or asset under section 1 shall further declare the asset liability in the same manner as provided in section 1. It goes on and even talks about offense committed when you do not do it within specified time. So these are made very clear. Is it not our failure to implement them that is what our problem is? If you can give us your brief thoughts, and I'll go to Mr. Senano about it before I come to you, Mr. Apiakubi.
That's what I'm saying, that I think, like Mr. Senano has said, our laws on the asset declaration is not fit for purpose. Now, it was being done because of the background where we came from. You know, we had some past history. And with the past history, it's that once people get to know your assets, property, you are put in some bracket. It comes with some fear that people. So this is why I'm sure, in the wisdom of the framers of the Constitution, looking at our past, says that declare the assets, but the assets you have to envelope it and put it with the Attorney General. Now with democracy, what we have enjoyed so far, the benefit of democracy and transparency, that is why we are saying that let's go a step ahead. Once we go a step ahead, let everybody know what you owe. Once your hands are not tainted, once you don't have anything to hide, I don't think that
let me fill you in. You lodge those assets declared with the Auditor General.
Yes, the Auditor General.
Not Attorney General.
No. Oh, sorry. I meant the Auditor General. So what it is lodged there, I think that was so. It is our past history informs why the law had been that way. You know, I don't want to go to the past histories where people even took some loans, monies at the time. We felt that, no, this was a heinous crime. And on hindsight, we believe that this was what has to be done. So moving forward, I think that we have to look at that law and make it fit for purpose. For people who want to serve. There are people who don't want anything to be known about them, how wealthy they are, what they owe, what they have. I think that if they don't want that, then they don't need to serve in
the public office.
And indeed, the law provides for publication of the assets.
Yes.
So it is that maybe the implementers of this provision will not go the extra mile of publishing.
Yeah.
And as Victor is saying, if the law requires of you to publish and you are not in a position to publish, you decline the appointment, and that's it. And you move on. But I'm not sure that publication alone is the solution. When you exit a public office, we must also look at the assets that you live on and see the gap, justify the increase.
It's actually clear in there as well.
So you don't just exit because you publish it, but let us know how much more have you acquired in your position as so, and then we audit it and see whether you can explain the wealth that generated this property. And if you are unable to explain, then we say charge you. Indeed, you may be compelled to even lose some of those properties by way of punishment. And then it will also blacklist you for future engagements, and even that may even affect generations behind you.
And I want to come to you, Mr. Senano. I heard you say earlier that the oral initiative, as it were, is brilliant. In fact, that's the word you used. But again, the concern is that you have Shraj, you have Yoko, and you have these constitutionally established institutions. How do you strengthen them, and how do you ensure that there is enough willpower without fear or favor to ensure people who do the wrong things are punished, instead of, you know, every political party coming in with initiatives trying to deal with the same problem?
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Let me take a bite on the earlier comments, and then I'll shoot straight into this. So I'm not quite sure whether the PNDC lawyer quoting is our current access declaration regime. You may want to check whether it's the same thing we are talking about, because clearly the current access declaration regime suffers a deficit in relation to verification and publication. These two things need to be addressed for it to become fit for purpose. So I can leave it at that. Now, the earlier comments by Mr. Pierre Kubi, first of all, I want to salute him. That kind of trying to mobilize people to point out to the president that there's a challenge somewhere is not easy. And at the end of it, people will have problems with you. And so, recommendations for that.
Well, he did say that he had problems even going into the 2024 general election, like his own party worked against him.
He said that on this platform.
Yes,
not on agenda, but on another
but
platform.
we all know it's an open secret.
Yes. Please go ahead with your point.
Well, I just want to salute people for being men and women of integrity when it matters most. This nation needs a lot of that. We don't need to get into all the details. Having said that, I think even though the example may have seemed not appropriate, in my mind, this was a minister where we had major issues of corruption. Take SNL, the whole process of SNL, the lack of consultation, the breaches of the law, the lack of following up with Parliament, and what have you. There are many other things that happened there that a lot of us in civil society were concerned about. I think it points to something. When he talks about how the president didn't respond, many of us assessing what is going on in the sector would say that the number one issue is a lack of political will. And properly defined, that lack of political will is leadership. We say everything rises and falls on the back of leadership. Leadership is cause, everything else is effect. The speed of a nation, of any entity, the speed of the pack depends on the leader of the pack. Now, if any country like Ghana is going to make serious amends to what is going wrong or make progress, it takes a leader who is effective at listening to what others are saying, has the experience, and have followers who are giving critical input, asking critical questions which they are listening to. And by the way, I'm just quoting one of our development equations for effective leadership, which is branded as it is equated to LEF, where L is the leader who listens, E is the leader who has experience and exposure, and F, where they are followers or people around him who ask the critical questions and give critical input. So if we want to also talk about moving ahead, one of the key things we need to resolve is political will in terms of leaders who are willing to be responsive to the suggestions being made because they have consensus. Now, I also agree with lawyer Wuda that there are all these scattered pieces of laws. One of the ideas that have come up is a consolidated corrupt practices act, so that these single things in silos here and there brought together will make it easier for us when we need to prosecute such cases. Now, your question, which was...
maybe, Mr. Senator, before you go there, can I make a suggestion, an invitation to you? Under the Constitution, Article 41F, mandates citizens for us to protect public property and public wealth.
Yes.
So if, for example, you are putting this case of, is it MPS?
SML.
SML or MPS, whatever you're saying. If you have the evidence of corrupt practices, let me challenge you. As a citizen, the law compels you to protect state property. We are two lawyers here. Let's test the law. Bring that evidence. Let's go to court to try to protect public purse.
But you heard him say that people who give information under even the Whistleblowers Act are not properly protected.
No, if you come to me to engage let's engage us. Let's test the law for whatever it is worth, and let's bring the evidence as you have it. Then we go to court and say we have capacity, or you have capacity as a citizen under Article 41F. We have this evidence. We want to protect state property and compel him to cough up the state property that has come to you. We will do that in the courts, and at least for nothing at all, test the law and make sure that we retrieve all such state property.
Yeah.
We will be covered within the law. We will do that. But Ghanaians, as I know them, allegations galore, but we need evidence beyond the allegations. So,
but Andy, the problem we may have with that is that Article 88 mandates that anything civil or criminal matters by the state, it has to be led by the Attorney General.
No.
I understand where you are coming from. Under the
I've given you a constitutional provision that says that.
Even 38. 38.5 says that citizens should do as much as possible. But the problem that normally you would have when you go to the court. So that's why we are saying that we should test the law. The 88 says that everything concerning the state, both civil and criminal.
It is not exclusive that because the state, the Attorney General is served with this mandate, you as a citizen cannot come under Article 41 and say that I want to protect state property. It does not exclude you. So let Attorney General enjoy his mandate. Let us as citizens also enjoy a mandate. But again, it's important for us to provide cogent evidence to be able to prosecute the case.
So let's not forget that Mr. Senonu was on the floor. He was just about answering that question. Mr. Senonu, if you could kindly go ahead.
Yeah, so they've made some of my points. I believe weeks ago, when people were bashing oral, I was one of the first to point out that Article 41F talks about the citizen protecting public assets and resources and reporting the misuse of same. Now, oral is brilliant because, you see, those of us in anti-corruption, we understand what whistleblowing is about. Last year, for my AU grant, we declared a year of whistleblowing. So there were many states promoting an understanding around whistleblowing. The data in Ghana from our Afrobarometer shows that over 30% of Ghanaians say they will not report any forms of corruption for two reasons. First reason, there will be a backlash. They are confident that persons who should not find out their identities will find out, and there will be some kind of retribution. And so they are not interested in doing it. Second reason, they are not quite sure that even if they report, anything will change. Now, the reason why oral for me is brilliant is it's a whistleblower's mechanism. It doesn't flout or breach any law because already as citizens, we have that right to collect information, report corruption, prevent corruption. We have civil society already with hotlines like GII. We collect information, we transfer it to institutions. And that's exactly what oral is doing. It's saying, submit the information to me. Why for me it's brilliant is the composition of the people. Are people who have a track record of obtaining information, not disclosing their sources, and getting results. These cover the two areas where Ghanaians say we will not report. And I'm saying that oral should be instituted. It should be institutionalized. Let's have this oral every day. It should be in our constitution and in our laws. Every time when we have a transition, for about 1 year, you have this platform or whistleblower mechanism in place where citizens are allowed to have confidence that the persons there on that committee are persons with a track record of receiving information and of making sure they handle it in a confidential matter and get their results. And so I think oral is brilliant. Now, you talk about other institutions. For me, there is no overlap of responsibility. What whistleblower does is to complement the efforts by providing that quality evidence. At the moment, there's no lack of reportage in some spaces, but the quality where it actually happens when there's whistleblowing is such that the institutions may go to court and not get the kind of rulings that we are expecting. Therefore, I think that oral is something that is good, and I think it should be institutionalized. The other institutions are doing their work. They probably need more political support. I think that having a fast-track anti-corruption court system will help. I think that more resources for them will be helpful. And I think that helping them to coordinate their activities a little better perhaps will give us better traction in the fight against corruption.
And I want to ask you this question before I come to the panel in studio, because in the midst of this, one of the things we've been talking about is the loopholes in our legal frameworks or even the Constitution itself and the need to deal with it. And we know that the late Professor Mills, late President of Ghana, former President of Ghana, started this Constitution review thing just to ensure that we deal with some of the things that were not helping us. One of the main things was the excessive power of the executive. We've spoken about the winner-takes-all policy, which breeds corruption and all of that. Just about 3 days ago, we heard the president announcing that indeed he was setting up a team to look at that report that was submitted earlier, I believe chaired by Professor H. Kwasi Prempeh, who is with the Center for Democratic Development. Having had all these conversations, what are your expectations as regards what kind of work these team members should submit to us so we are able to make some progress, really?
I think that this is the last one, multiplicity of committees. We won't get that anywhere. The last one chaired by Clara Kasati, I think was just barely 3 weeks ago. They submitted to the president. And it was interesting, change of government, a new team. But the team has very credible persons on it. In my mind, they have found opportunity to bring this to closure. I hear they've been given, if I remember right, 5 months. Things like this, what you need is stakeholder consultation. Make sure that the process involves a defined process that allows enough of the key persons whose voices should be heard. And you can validate what has been captured so far. And I am hoping that this time around, especially with the supermajority that one side has, we'll go to make progress and make the constitutional change. We do need those constitutional changes. This thing of getting a majority of ministers from parliament, it just undermines the capacity of parliament to provide oversight to the executive. And so that's a non-starter in terms of checks and balances. I think that we need things on political party financing there. We need to make sure that the issue of a long-term development plan is clearly established in the Constitution so that people don't come and run with manifestos. Sometimes the manifestos are just full of campaign promises that, they are dreams that often are not as realistic as if it is something that all of us agreed on. And when you come in, you just continue with it. So I think it is good that we are taking a look at the Constitution. I'm hoping that this next 4-year term will be able to properly reset some of these things so that we can make progress where we have not in the past.
And I'm coming to you, Mr. Daudu, because one of the major points he made, Mr. Sinanu made, was political party funding. I mean, in the US, it's so clear. We know how much you get and where you're getting it from. The same thing is in Europe. You can say that these are developed areas, but what has made it difficult for us to do that?
You know, the political fund, it's a thorny issue that we have to look at. I think that if we are able to have our own homegrown solution as to the political financing, you see, and we are able to also allow the Auditor General to audit the political parties, then you will realize that financing will not be a huge problem because...
That's what you're calling for the Auditor General to audit political parties?
Yes, it is even it. But we need to look at the modalities. How the parties, its formation, the leaders, they are being paid by the state, they are being given money, and they are being audited.
You remember in 2023, Kennedy Japan even talked about he being given $800 million by the MPP for him to step down. Well, we heard another MPP executive denying that.
No. You see, the biggest problem is that even in our political parties law, foreign entities and even foreign countries cannot donate.
But they do indirectly.
But they do it indirectly. Now, how do we look at law? Excuse me to say this, I may not be pleasant, is that now the miscreants and even the criminals now want to fund political activities so that they see it as a time like insurance. So if you're a leader...
Do you have evidence that that's what's happening? That miscreants are supporting just so they can have space?
You know, I've been in it, and I'm not saying that genuine people with love for the party will not do it. But also you find other people that once you trace their record, the track record, you realize that these people are miscreants, they are criminals who want to get in. Because politics has now been monetized. And once it's been monetized, these are the people who can contribute more. And now want to have a leverage over, because they feel that he who pays the piper
must have a
costs,
say.
yes, must cost the tune. So I think it is one of the things. People always say that it cannot be done, but I think that it should. And let's look at it, because the money that we lose through corruption, through pork barrel projects that we do as political parties, because you need to finance your political party.
And I
think once we are doing that, we'll be able to cut it down. And once people know that I'll be monitored and it is for the benefit of the state, I think we will have very decent political activities.
And I want to come to you, Mr. Piakubi. You heard Adam Senanu. Hopefully that should be your final word. We are running out of time now. You heard Adam Senanu saying that we should institutionalize oral. How do you make sure that it's not like Office of the Special Prosecutor, where we've had Kisia Jabin coming to tell us that, you know, he's Ankonam and, I mean, he's not getting all the resources he needs?
You see, oral is just putting the laws of Ghana in motion. Because even the criminal code says that if you see somebody doing an act that is of criminal nature and you don't even report, you are also liable to face criminal charges. And the other laws also compels, like we said, 41GF compels citizens to protect state property. So ORA, by its operation, is operationalizing existing laws, except that ORA as a group doesn't have a mandate, so to speak. But even citizens, we are enjoined by the Constitution to even effect citizens' arrest while you find somebody engaging in criminality. So if ORA will bring corporates or bring information that will lead to prosecution of alleged criminals, they would be doing their constitutional and lawful duty. But what I don't like ORA to be doing is to be targeting people and assuming to have power to compel them or to punish them. No, you don't. Or that the law allows you expose the wrongdoing.
You think that's what they are doing now?
No, if they go to the extent of attempting to punish, then they will be getting out of law. But when they bring evidence for the state institutions mandated to prosecute, to rely on such evidence to do the prosecution, I am all for it.
Thank you.
Indeed, beyond even ORA, all of us are under obligation to expose wrongdoing and even engage in civil arrest when you find somebody doing what is wrong.
Just a second.
I think let me just assure everybody that ORA is at this stage just gathering information. But I'm sure to investigate and prosecute, they will definitely have a legal backing. And if you are not a witch,
but
you cannot be hunted.
We have
and I'm sure that nothing, if you have clean hands, nothing about
institutions mandated.
I think the point he's making is that it should be within the law.
Yes, it will be within the law. And I'm sure that once information has been gathered, the necessary steps will be taken and make sure that ORA has that power.
We'll have to end it here.
Yes.
We'll have to end it
here. ORA doesn't have that power.
No, it was a stopgap measure to collect the information. I'm sure when the Attorney General comes in...
I have spoken about it, that even me, when I find somebody doing what is wrong, I am under obligation to report.
You're under obligation to report. Yes. We'll have to end it here. We've run out of time. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on Agenda. And Apia Kubi, his immediate past Member of Parliament for Asante Achem North in the Ashanti region. We've also had Victor Kojo Daudu. He's a senior member of the governing NDC's legal team. And of course, we've had Adam Senanu as well, who is co-chair Citizens Movement Against Corruption. My name is Beatrice Sedu. Thank you so much for joining us on Agenda tonight. Join us again next week. Coming up next is Ghana Tonight. Have a good evening.